My name is Jonathan de Hemmer Hamborg. I'm an associate partner at KPMG in Luxembourg. I deal with mergers and acquisitions, so lead financial advisory services. So we do sales side mandates, buy side mandates, fundraisings, strategic reviews, that kind of stuff falls under my responsibility. First of all, I think buy and build strategies is a proven concept. So there are many successful examples out there. There are also many disasters, but there are many successful examples of where it's gone really well. In diverse industries. You've seen it in pet food, you've seen it in packaging, funeral homes. So it's been around for a while and it's done well. And then it also works well in the current economic context, which is at the end of the financial cycle, where deal multiples, especially for larger companies, are quite high. So it's a concept that's independent of having to create a market or having sort of strong economic growth in a special market. It also works well, even in a falling interest rate environment. So I think it's a good fit to the macroeconomic context, together with the fact that it's low risk in the sense that it's been proven that it can work. Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of benefits out there, and I think we touched on one of them is the possibility for multiple arbitrage, just because the larger companies are valued significantly higher than smaller companies. So you buy a sound platform company and you can tuck in small acquisitions that can be acquired for relatively lower multiples, and instantly you sort of magically create value, which is obviously appealing for a lot of private equity firms. Plus it's a good way to put more capital to work, right? There's a record amount of dry powder out there. So you can get that money out and working for you. So, well, I think it's difficult to get it right quickly, because you obviously, as a temporary owner, you want to start creating results really quickly, and you need to make sure that your platform is mature enough and that it's ready for that additional growth. Because if you have to start fixing issues in your platform company first, that can easily take 1 or 2 years. So if you have to wait for that before you can really start to tuck in acquisitions, or you start doing it too soon and you miss it, that's obviously a big issue. So those are the challenges that you kind of need to solve. First of all, the usual factors are always important. So you've got to do your diligence right. You've got to look at the business plan. You've got to look at the competitive advantage of the company. You've got to look at the management team, whether it's committed and strong, etc., etc. And of course the market, whether there's a window that you need to be working with. But the key factors for getting it right is to finding the right platform company to start with. So you need a company that's, I'll divide that into 5 sub-points to find the right platform company you actually need to look at. So first of all, it needs to be relatively stable and generate predictable cash flows, because if it's a highly cyclical company and you hit it at the wrong point in the cycle, it might not be a good idea to pursue such a strategy. You also need a platform company that can execute buy and build strategy. So somebody, ideally the management team would have done it before. Ideally they'd have integration capabilities, or at least have it with the GP. And that's linked to another point in corporate governance. So you need to make sure that you've got the right setup to make decisions quickly, to act on M&A opportunities and execute those. Because if you've got a complicated corporate governance set up and you've got to get too many people on the same page every single time you're looking at an opportunity, it might never happen, and that's not the right way to go. We also need to have right-sized targets around, and have a lot of them. So you need to look at the structure of the market to make sure that you've got enough companies that you can potentially go and buy. And then finally, I think linked to the integration part is the management information system. So you need to make sure that you've got good financial data in the target company, and that you can, or in the platform company, and that you can use that to roll out into your acquisitions, so that you can keep getting good data on which ones are performing well and not. So there's a lot of literature out there about what can go right and what can go wrong, and of course, if you get one of those 5 things wrong that I talked about, you could potentially end up in a bad situation. But I think looking at the transaction itself, you have to diligence more than just the company. You need to diligence the whole market situation. You need to look at targets or potential roll-up targets up front. So you need to understand that. And then I think you need to also diligence specifically some of the points that I talked about linked to the the infrastructure of the platform company, the management information system, the capabilities to make acquisitions essentially. But I think a common mistake that we see is that GPs may lose focus of the overall picture. There's a lot of details that you need to get right, and it's easy to get sucked into one of those details, and of course the devil is in the detail, but at some point you have to look at the broader picture and believe in the market opportunity. That's still the most important, that you actually see a market opportunity out there and that you sort of go for that. And then you also need to make sure that you've got an exit, which you're always thinking about your exit before you go in, and these cases are no different. One of the key parts to do that is to have a good advisor, both on the legal side but also on the corporate finance side. That can take off some of that pressure, but otherwise it's really about the investment committee having the overview of the transaction, the potential transaction, and the opportunity at hand. So the best practices, I'd say, it depends if you're buying and selling, obviously, but if you're buying, I should take that example now, you have to think like a seller. So you have to put yourself in the minds of the seller or the seller's advisors and look at what strategies they'd be employing. You have to look at what is it worth to you versus what is it worth to someone else. And especially when you're buying roll-up targets, it's a good thing to keep in mind, let's say. And as in all M&A processes, you have to think about the competitive tension there could be and how to potentially manage and diffuse that, which is again something an advisor can obviously help with. But as always, you need to have a lot of stamina in the negotiations, in the process, keep focus until the end, while not losing sight of the big picture, as we just say. And then I think, just really make sure you have, for the closing, make sure you've got good lawyers who can think commercially to get the deal over the line at the last minute. I think we've touched on a lot of the areas that could potentially be pitfalls. So I'd say the key risks are getting too hung up on details and losing the focus of the big picture. Could also be vice versa, focusing on the big picture and missing all the details, right? So getting that balance right is important. And then, my final piece of advice would be get quality independent advice.